Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DLC. We are back. We are back. Here we are. And we have a very, very special guest for you today. So thank you, everyone. We'll give you a couple of minutes to join. And we'll give you a welcome, a warm welcome, where we're here once again convening for the Design Leadership Community event. An event that we have done on a monthly basis. And then we had a hiatus, we had a break, but now we're back. And we're back with a vengeance. We got no one less than Mr. Ryan Rumsey. Yay! So Ryan, look, people are gonna join slowly and surely. Perhaps if we could start, this will be recorded as well, by the way. So the good thing is it will be also shared high and wide on our channels, okay, for those who couldn't attend today. So we are here on multi-channel streaming, I understand, Facebook, YouTube, and etc. I would love to ask you to perhaps tell our audience a little bit of background about who you are, what you've been up to. Most people know who you are already in this community, but maybe you can give your own self-assessment, what's beyond LinkedIn, and share with us a little bit. We'd love to hear you.
Yeah, happy to. Well, thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to chat with you. And yeah, so about me, what's not on LinkedIn? Well, I grew up in New Jersey, right outside New York City. That's where I grew up as a kid, sort of the home of the Sopranos, but I was neither like Italian or Irish or Catholic or Jewish. I was just sort of somebody who spent some time with all those people and got to watch, oh, that's interesting, right? And not part of that. And then I ended up going to school at West. And so that was the beginning of about 30 years of sort of living in the West, if you will. So I lived in Tucson, Arizona, and then Los Angeles and Austin, Texas. And we spent a couple of years in Switzerland, but then back to Austin. And then recently, just this summer, we moved back to the northeast of the United States and live in rural Vermont. And I've moved to a eco-cooperative co-housing situation. So what that means is I now live on a large piece of farmland with 23 other families and households, and we caretake of the land, but it's all about sustainability. And trying to live a little bit more off the land, live a little more thoughtful, those types of things. I've got 3 children who are, super important to me. They're number one. I'm dad is number one. I have a partner and a wife who is a psychotherapist.
That helps.
And I have a dog named Ziggy. I'd say music is how I see the world. And so really? I do not have a traditional design background. I never went to design school. Started out as an engineer, hated Fortran, all these types of things, and ended up studying history. So if anything, I was more of a research background. But I just happened to be lucky enough to be born at a time and go to college at a time when the internet became a reality. And so I spent much of the 90s reverse engineering HTML and playing in Photoshop and learning sort of how to make things on the fly. So it's a little bit about me.
That's great. That's really interesting. And, in our previous conversation, it was really fun to hear, the sort of stuff that you worked in some companies, which can be quite surprising because obviously everyone assumes that if you worked at Apple, then you must have done something with the iPhone, right? I mean, come
No,
on.
no.
But no, it
Yeah.
isn't,
So
right? That's not the case.
yeah. So I've worked at some wonderful organizations and had some really fantastic experiences, but I have not sort of had the traditional, what everybody knows is like the traditional design avenue. Most of the stuff that I've worked in is what now might be called enterprise experience or enterprise tools or employee experience. I worked for many years in customer support, customer experience. So when I worked at Apple, I started 3 weeks before the iPhone came out. It was a very interesting time, but I did not work in Steve Jobs' organization. I worked in Tim Cook's organization. So he was the chief financial officer at the time. And I worked for Apple Care. So I was building essentially web applications, designing and doing all the front end development and research for web applications that were the tools that Apple Care advisors use to support everybody around the globe. So if you think of things like Zendesk or Service Desk or Intercom, I was building applications like that in, say, like 2007-ish. But we were trying to emulate native applications, but building in the browser.
All right, you see?
Back then.
So not always you can start with the sexiest part of the things, but that's why you get to learn, and that's why you get to
but it's
make
pretty
an impact,
it's pretty sexy.
Is it? Can we have a look at it later?
I mean, there is one screenshot that is on the web of the tool, one of the tools that I worked on, and somebody took a screenshot and posted it on the web, and that's the only one. That's the only evidence you could ever see of the tool that I worked on. But it was sexy in the sense that we were doing like responsive design maybe about 2 years ahead of when Ethan Marcotte wrote about it, and we were playing around with like nightly WebKit builds in the browser, and I was doing like advanced CSS because we were Safari only. And didn't have to worry about Internet Explorer and other browsers, and so there was a lot of
we
fun.
Still don't.
Yeah. A lot of fun, and I got to work with like lots of really interesting teams, like localization teams, translating, localizing, web applications and content into like 23 different languages, and getting to sit with customer support advisors and sales teams, like getting to travel with them or sit in on their calls. We actually were able to at Apple, this is like 2008, I was able to, at my desk, put a headset on and jump into any live call around the globe. Like in Apple Care. Yeah. So like most companies don't even have this capability then, but that was like the cool stuff that we would be able to do is if we wanted to do research, we could go out, or we could just sit in and listen into a live call as it was happening.
I think something for the Chinese government. I think they would love something like that these days. But really great stuff, huh? Congratulations.
Yeah, it's fun.
And then obviously you've been to EA. I worked a little bit with EA when I was in Australia, but amazing company. All the experiential part of design there, right?
Right.
Because you have all the Comic-Con and everything. So I love that. You have a tank there and, what do you call it? Not cross-dressing. That's what we do in Carnival in Brazil. How do you call it? When you change clothes?
You mean when they're like cosplay, like that type of stuff?
That's it.
Cosplay. Yeah. Okay.
Cosplay, So anyway, so the experience design, right, is a lot of non-digital, right? A lot of experience. But you talk about transformation of employee experiences in EA, and that's what really attracted me, because obviously we work with talents. So I wanted to hear from you a little bit about employee experience. What did you do at EA Games?
Sure. So this sort of builds on my previous experience. Most of my professional experience has really been building the tools that employees use. So I didn't get to work on video games. I got to work on the tools that the video game, developers had to use day by day to do their jobs well. And so the things that we would do is, I think if anybody works at a company, just to get your day-to-day job done often requires you to use like all these random tools. So at the end of the day, your desktop might have 12 different browser tabs of weird tools that you have to use to just get your day-to-day done. You have to jump to Jira, you have to go to this database, you have to go over here. And that is very costly, costs a lot of money for a company to pay for all this software, but also the inefficiencies that are involved, the time, and then the cognitive load that every employee has to use. And so what we would imagine is, what if all the expectations that we have as just sort of software users these days, we applied them to the employee, but we do it for the entire life cycle of the employee, which means you start before they're an employee.
Yep.
What if you could complete? So one of my favorite projects was like completely reinventing the talent attraction. So the recruiting process. So working with the VP of talent acquisition, we essentially said, the way most interviews happen is kind of the opposite of the way it should happen. It's kind of closed. We try to play tricks and ask tricky questions, and it does not really set up the candidate to be the best candidate they could be.
Sure.
And then if they have to travel or if they come into the office, you send them a weird email with a PDF and it's hard to read the directions and maybe they're late and, all these things. But we sort of said, what if we change that? And the experience was more like, here are all the people you're going to interview with. Here's their LinkedIn profiles. Here's a video of them talking about the job. Here are the questions that you're going to be asked. Here are the turn-by-turn directions, and then no matter what, if you got to this point of interviewing with us, we'll give you game codes because we're a gaming company and we want, this type of experience. But my favorite aspect of this experience was it was actually the first interaction with what would be the intranet. So once you get hired as an employee, it's the exact same experience that you had to do as the candidate. So you think of the pressure as the first day of your job. You're just trying to figure out like how to turn on your computer and where to log in.
Where's the bathroom?
So if anything, where's the bathroom? Where's the printer, the coffee maker? So if your software then, imagine that it automatically provisions the software that you need rather than having to go ask IT to set you up with, Figma. It automatically gives
like
you
a
the
proper
license.
onboarding.
Right. Onboarding. And it automatically has like maybe some meetings scheduled for you. But also if you have to travel, when you travel to maybe a different office, you don't necessarily need to know what your benefits are, your retirement is. You want to know what the menu is, or which office, how to find that particular meeting room or things like that. And so those were really, really fun experiments and software to build. So that's why I found it was exciting, is because I got to build software and work with collaborators, and partners that we were working on the software that like our colleagues got to enjoy. So it was like actually then be able to interact with the users that you're making stuff for.
That's great, isn't it? So much easier if the user is there every day at the company instead of you having to chase them around, right?
100%. Yeah.
Makes it a lot easier for the designer. That's great, Ryan. Well, look, thank you for the background infos and this amazing sort of short story. What we should focus on next, perhaps now, is the topic of the day, right? We are here to talk about why business thinking for designers matters more than ever, no? And
Yeah.
one might say, look, I get a lot of offers on LinkedIn. I'm a UI designer, I'm a UX designer. I've got great salary, there's jobs pumping everywhere. I don't need to worry about learning, business language, That's boring. I don't want to learn that, I'm great at
Yeah.
Figma,
Yeah.
I can do my UX research. I can do everything. I'm great at doing, all of the process. I've got my team here, right?
Yeah.
So why worry with that, right?
So what I would say is like, go get your money, go get those jobs. Right now, in particular, the demand is high, right? Particularly for people who might be new to the industry. Go get it, right? Go take advantage of that. I think you're right. Not everybody needs to know this stuff. If you're completely satisfied and you thrive as a human being by just like putting your headphones on and working in Figma, great, wonderful, keep doing it. Now, if you happen to be somebody who also wants to see more environmental change, more equity in the world, more societal improvement, more collective impact, pixels do not move policy, if you will. And while working in Figma or whatever your favorite tool is fine and excellent and can help you, if you want to sort of push your company to do better, if you want to help put better things out into the world, that is where we are likely to work with people who come from other disciplines, who make decisions in different ways. And therefore, if we understand a little bit about design, it's to have some empathy and understand our audience so that we can understand how to create solutions and figure out problems with them. This is where business thinking comes in. And the way I sort of define it is less about the MBA traditional business, go learn how to create market advantage and work with math and sales funnels. That stuff's good. But business thinking is more around like, what is the business thinking? What is my colleague thinking? How do they make decisions? If you work with product managers every day or engineers every day or senior stakeholders every day, the reality is we all make decisions in different ways. And understanding a little bit about our colleagues, about how they process information, about what they value in terms of how they make decisions, is important to then find new ways to collaborate with each other, to earn trust, to get more impact that we want, so that when we go back to Figma, we maybe have to go back and forth fewer times. We maybe are able to get, a more impact out of the work that we do.
Perfect. And I think you mentioned impact. And Ryan, I know we talked about before on how you can connect your work with the final impact, right? So is that something to do with also business thinking?
Absolutely. So let's just talk about impact, because again, that's a big, broad word. Impact can be felt by just the one person you're working with, or like, I think what a lot of us want is like, can you show how design helps the company make money or reduce costs, or, whatever it is that the company increase satisfaction. And I think one of the big realities is that if we are hired to do a job and we are paid to do so, a company exists to try to win. They want to continue to exist. So if it's like for-profit money, they have to make money to keep doing what they want to do. If it's a nonprofit money, they have to keep getting contributions to stay in business. And I think one of the hardest things to do, the majority of us, or what our job is to do, is to help organizations find new ways to win. And when we talk about impact, it's tricky for us as designers to show how we help a company find new ways to win. And so often I think we look for the just perfect answer. You know, the question that comes up all the time is like, what are the right metrics? Just show me the metrics that show how I win. And what I would say is like, that's a perfectly fine question, but the metric that helps Apple win is different than the metric that helps Electronic Arts win, is different than the metric that helps Comcast win, is different that helps any other company win. And so we don't really have a framework, if you will, to help us show how we win. But the other side of that is, I think often we don't understand how we maybe present ourselves to our colleagues. So if I go into any company right now and I say there's a team of 10 designers and I'm the CEO and I say, what is good design? Am I going to get the same answer from the 10 designers?
No, 10 different answers.
10 different answers. And so not only are we struggling to show how we connect and show impact, we don't know that our maybe senior stakeholders think we're making it up because we can't even agree on what it is.
And we can't communicate that well either.
We can't communicate even with each other or decide with each other what good is. And so that's this transition that business thinking is then about taking, say, you know, a lot of our industry, we talk about the broad principles of design, you know, Dieter Rams or Dr. Patty Moore, here are the 10 principles of design. Well, that works generally across any design, any industry. But when a company hires you, we talk about language again, they're hiring you to find that definition of design at that place. They want that localized version of this is what good is here. Now track and monitor how you're doing with that here. And so I think other industry things that are commonplace and talked about a lot, like say OKRs, which is this framework of tracking performance, objectives, and key results. They generally work okay if you only have one product and if you are already measuring and you're quite mature with measuring.
That's difficult when you're launching something new, isn't it?
But that framework is not so great when you're trying to launch something new. Nobody knows how to measure. Nobody even knows that, you know, a metric is made of multiple measures. And you have to talk about statistics and all these things. And so what we struggle with is then having a framework that is like, okay, how do I show that I'm tracking my work, you know, to show how it connects to your work? And how do I show that I'm not making it up? Right. So we need some type of framework to show how our work is like the cause to the effect.
Sure.
And then show that we're not making it up. So this is like some of the stuff that I teach now is like going back to the basics. And it's basically setting up things like if-then statements. If we reduce errors, we anticipate that that will increase adoption. If we improve accessibility, we expect that that will improve trust. If we improve trust and adoption, we expect that more customers will be satisfied. If more customers are satisfied, then we expect revenue to increase. So it's like these series of just if-then statements that we build up. And that the reality is that takes time, it takes experimentation, it takes practice, and there's no perfect answer that's easy.
No, of course not. And that's the work, the great work you've been doing with Second Wave Dive, which is your new company, right? That you've been running and independently and happily. And I love what you said at the beginning when we were talking. You were saying, "I'm gonna say anything I want because I'm not working for anyone anymore," right? So I'm free to speak my mind.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, uh, have jobs where we may see things, we may witness things, we may experience things that we can't really talk about. And they may be the wins, they may be the losses, the good and the bad, but we can't really talk about it because we want to go get another job. Sure. And so what we were talking about, I think previously, is like, I think with my company now, I want to set up an environment where we can talk about those things, because that's going to really help us move through these things that are really hard, because I don't anticipate ever going back. I've done that. I've kind of lived that life. And now my mission now is to help see and validate people who are going through that, to just help them through that sort of mission, because I need them to get going. And the reality is they're going to be much better than I ever was, because they're going to have more practice.
Well, of course, and they have different skill sets, and they are, more used to the current world and what's coming next. But the point is, I think it's much needed to have some guidance for the design leaders. I feel like there's a lot of loneliness, even though there are groups, and I participate in groups of WhatsApp. There's great events like Interaction Latin America, but inside the company, the design leader is kind of lonely, right? Because
very much,
man, there's not that many other design leaders. It's you and the team, and that's it, right? And sort yourself out. Good luck.
I would say it's very true. It's very lonely, but I want to ensure that design leaders know that they're not alone. Exactly. That the reality is that most people are going through this. And I think a lot of the leadership transition is, maybe when you worked in Figma, you got a lot of mentorship, you got a lot of coaching, you got a lot of guidance and instruction. And I think the reality is, when you move like into leadership roles, more senior roles, that becomes less and less.
Absolutely.
And it becomes like a mystery where you have to figure it out on your own. And that's quite lonely, right? And you maybe have access, you have access to information that maybe is information that isn't great, but then you have to like keep that information, and it's tough. And so I think a lot of people
politics, right? Politics, you got to deal with politics, you got to deal with a lot of different stuff, of course. And one thing you said as well, Ryan, and before, that I thought was remarkable challenge to overcome as a design leader was, how can you get a seat at the table without power as a trap?
How
can you sit at the table, right?
Well, I think,
without being trapped by the power. Yeah. How does that work?
Well, actually, it's the opposite in a little way, because I think so much of what the design industry talks about, especially here in the US, is, if I just had the seat at the table, if I just had that title, if they just made me a VP, if they just got me in that meeting, everything would be fine. And what I think see and experience is, lots of people will get the title, but then they're treated the same way, and they have no sort of power or authority, not like in a manipulative way, but they still struggle with being heard or feeling seen. And so that's where it says, like, your goal, yes, go get that VP title, but your goal is not, that is not the end, to have the seat. It's to, when you get there, I think a lot of people want to keep pushing the status quo and trying to make things better in whatever ways they can. And so that's where we say, if you get that seat at the table and you have no power, it's a trap. You're going to feel even worse, because suddenly here you are, a VP, and you still can't influence change. It's what I've experienced, and I think what a lot of my friends and peers have experienced, is that leaves them even more lonely. Suddenly,
it's like,
what were they doing?
More admin work,
Right? But it's more like, what was I doing? I thought, I thought that they were going to be ready for this change, and no, they're not. And so the things that I teach now is basically how to be aware that there are more things going on, how to assess whether politics are happening and what variety of politics are happening, so that you can better address it when you get the title that you're wanting to have, when you're there. Because I want the next generations of leaders not to just become a VP, but to come in with a VP and like keep going, keep pushing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know if you watched the series Succession on HBO.
I haven't. It's hilarious.
Yet.
Yeah, I haven't yet.
Okay. Well, it's basically a massive company and the family is fighting for power between them, right? The brother, the father, the sister, and it's pure politics constantly. And it's absolutely hilarious because you see how movements, decisions, and power struggles and all of that happens, and that's completely independent from someone's actual technical ability, right?
That's right.
On their job, right?
That's right.
It's much more how they handle the situation, the people, the politics, etc.
That's right.
And the technical guy can be someone else, or the girl is someone else. That person doesn't know jack shit about technical, right? They just know about handling politics.
So much. Yeah. And what's then interesting about that is, well, that's not what they teach in business school. That doesn't make business sense. And so, I joke around with friends and I say, how many MBAs have you worked with who are not like MBAing? They're not using the tools that they learned. They're using all this other stuff. And so there's an important word or phrase that I use a lot, which is about claiming your agency. So agency is really the capability to act to produce a particular result. So I'm going to act to produce some type of result in the world. And really at that leadership level, why business thinking is important to embrace it is that there are many factors that affect decision-making. As you said in Succession, sure, business sense, money, know-how, incentives, culture. We talk about these things a lot, but also like racism, insecurity, families of origin. Did they grow up like in trauma? That's going to inform how they make decisions. And so I think for many of us, if we want to have agency and sort of address some of these things, we have to remember that wishing that they don't exist doesn't make them go away. And this is a phrase that I hear so much. Well, if that product manager just wasn't here, everything would be fine. Well, no, that doesn't actually make it go away. And so the important part of doing this and acknowledging this and sort of using different frameworks and practice to take this on is that then you can claim agency, you can have agency, which is about choosing how to react in response. And I think that's the important thing, is like having some ability to choose how you're going to respond to somebody who's, forgive my French, but asshole, right? Rather than just having to deal with an asshole.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And, looking at the website of Second Wave Dive, I love that you have the strategic business thinking course, design org strategy course, right? So you have sort of 12-week-long programs, 6-week-long programs, things that are quite manageable, right? So you see quite a few offers of courses out there, but it really stood out to me how relevant this is, right? How relevant
I appreciate it
for designers to get a different view of things, which is great.
Yeah, and I think an important thing to acknowledge is that 12 weeks is a lot. It's a lot of work. And so there are other programs out there that are wonderful. Where I particularly focus is more at that experienced professional level. Like if you're a lead or manager or director, that's pretty much a sweet spot. And then it's like the things that nobody wants to talk about, we're going to really do a lot of practice in those things, which is about the situations that we're in, and providing frameworks to things like organizational strategy. Like maybe you didn't know that there were frameworks of how design creates differentiation that, say, engineering doesn't. These types of things. But an important part for me is it's also not cheap. And so I provide a lot of scholarships. I provide scholarships. So every 5 seats that we sell, we give 1 seat away. And we give those seats away to those who come from marginalized groups, or maybe don't have the access, because let's face it, the US dollar compared to some other currencies isn't always so friendly, right? So
it's not friendly.
Those are important things to, right, especially, right? And so it's then important for me to say, if I do this work, I have to ensure that also it's not just for the people who are already privileged and advantaged and whatnot. And so we do a lot of fun, interesting stuff. It's a little bit different, and it's going well so far.
So let's say I'm a design leader, I'm in a level of manager, or let's say, I'm a director, etc., and I'm looking for a way to overcome my day-to-day challenges, right? We did a research a while ago, last year, with design leaders for this group of design leadership community, which are over 500 people now, actually. And this, we did a research, and people said that some of the main challenges involve attracting talent, managing talent, obviously developing your team, trying to make sure that they are also, pushing you up, right? You can't go up if you don't have people below you pushing you up. So the talent is a great discussion. The other great discussion is the business, obviously, sit at the table discussion. Yeah, how can I get a seat at the table? The other great challenge I remember from memory was, how do you become comfortable with the fact that you are no longer, your output is no longer design itself, you're no longer technical, now your output is email and presentations. So, but the point is, what I want to bring to you, Ryan, the question really is, if you would say for a summary for a design leader, what do you think should be the key areas of focus for this person to work on that you see that are the most common, right? So that these people can focus on that.
Right. I think one of the things that you mentioned, just around, talent, but really humans, is if you become a manager for the first time, it's a completely different job. You are now responsible for other people, and it's probably a job where you're not getting a lot of guidance on what good management or bad management, or we talk about things like servant leadership and all these things. And so I think it's important to develop skills there, but also talk to people who have gone through that before and who are willing to then share what has worked and what hasn't. Laura Hogan here in the US has a wonderful course. She has an engineering background, but she has a course that is called the Complete Demystifying Management Program. It's an all online program, and it's one of those that really talks about leveling up your people management skills. It's really focused in on that.
Laura Hogan, great.
Laura Hogan, Lara Hogan.
Yeah.
When it comes to, a lot of that will then covers the sort of attraction of talent. And I think what a lot of companies want to do is sort of market their culture. And what I can tell you is the companies who have really great culture don't have to market their culture. You know what I mean? They don't have to do a marketing or PR campaign to say how wonderful they are.
Yeah.
But so that all comes down to that ability of managers to be able to lead people effectively and sort of like also deliver, harsh truths, but land them softly. Like,
Yes, I like
be very direct, but not be a jerk, these types of things.
Well, I like what she says here. Looking at her website, she says, setting expectations as a manager will help you recognize when and how to be more empowering and when to be more directive, right?
That's right.
When do you leave them, let little babies go alone, and when do you have to go and help them?
And there's actually,
direct?
there's a wonderful framework for anybody watching that you can go look at, which is very pragmatic, but it's called situational management. Situational leadership. And it's basically a 2x2, 4 quadrants, but it basically shares like little tips and tricks of like when to allow somebody a lot of space, when to give them a to-do list, when to have one type of conversation versus when to have others. And that is really helpful just from this sort of pragmatic way. So it's called situational leadership, and where it helps just give little tips and tricks of perfect.
Great.
I think then we also need to talk about what I think a lot of managers don't really talk about, and about it you mentioned, is what's next. So I learned to be a good manager. Then I want to maybe be a good director. Maybe then I want to be a head of design. Maybe then I want to be a VP. When it comes to all of that stuff, you're then talking about you have to understand how your company makes money. You have to understand how do organizational leaders make decisions. How have they made decisions in the past? What are all these other sort of things that are outside of my design craft that I have to understand. And so there's all this other stuff of like learn business, but it's really learning people. So you could, pretty quickly kind of even do some Google searches and understand how your company makes money.
Yes, and more than that, absolutely. But what I would compliment to that, sorry, Ryan, to interrupt you. What I just want to compliment that point, because the thing is, when I talk to designers, often I say, do you understand the business? Do you understand what the business does? Yes, of course, we sell insurance for middle level, citizens who work in the industry, and most of them are in this sort of salary range. Okay, great, but that doesn't mean you understand how the company makes money yet. You need to understand the competition. You need to understand what's the pricing, how the pricing was created. You need to understand if maybe there's the government going to change now, because in Chile we're going to have a new election. How's that going to impact? Because it's
regulations.
And then it could change everything. Exactly.
So there are simple little activities.
Laws behind it, right? So there's so many aspects of understanding how it makes money, because there's compliance, there's competition, there is discounts, right? There is macroeconomic scenarios. And there are different opinions within the company as well of how the company should make money and how it makes money now and how it could make money in the future, right? Just because
so all those are
like now, right?
Those are all huge.
They just care about how it makes now and to
That's
who
right.
and how much it costs right now in this point. At this
so
point.
A way to make it more pragmatic, more tangible for us, because those are all real. But you can't know all that like tomorrow on Monday. That's like institutional knowledge that will take a long time. So there are practical things. And I just wrote ecosystem mapping in here, which is say you're just a manager or a lead for the first time. Maybe you just draw a map of the product that you're working on. Who are the actors? Okay, what do I mean by actors? Well, there's a customer. There's maybe the sales team. Maybe there's a company. Maybe there's, like, if you do physical product, there's a supplier. Maybe there's a vendor, like you're just trying to list who are all the different actors involved. And then you would say, okay, what are the products and services? So like take Nike, for example. Nike does lots of different things, but they sell shoes. Well, when you're a customer and you order shoes off the website, does Nike handle the money, or does Nike use a third-party vendor like Stripe to handle the money? Don't know. But those are good questions to start building out, to sort of say like, oh,
how
wait,
does the shoe get there? Right?
the
What's
shoe
the
costs, right? The shoe costs $60, but then 3% of that goes to Stripe. Oh, but the shoe doesn't start here. The shoe starts at the manufacturer, and then it goes to this other place, the supplier, and then it goes into a warehouse. And then there's an actor who has to receive the order. And so as you begin to sort of just start mapping out, what are the products and services? What are the transactions that take place? All of a sudden you start to understand more of the business model of how we make money. And those are the tangible things then that you could say, well, we improved this login button because if we fix this by 3 seconds, that will reduce the amount of time that it takes our supplier to handle the transaction. And if we do 1 million transactions a year at 3 seconds, oh, that's a lot of money. And then suddenly you're starting to talk about what other people care about, not just Figma.
What I see, Ryan, though, that I see that a lot of designers, even in the leadership positions, they still struggle. Perhaps they do get a lot of time wasted on the day-to-day stuff, on the on the job stuff. But apart from that, what we realize is that the investments that they make in learning, being more inquisitive, being more curious, talking to more people, different people at the company, and really understanding the environment around them is still very short. It's still very not curious. So, and that works for every sort of employee, not just design, but if you work at a company, you have to be more curious. You have to be the most curious as you can be, but you have to know how to approach people to obtain the information you need, right? So
that's right.
If you are curious, and moreover, you have the communication abilities and the charming abilities, right, to get the information you need from the different people in the organization, that will give you a massive advantage over the rest of the people, because that's your ability to evolve and to become more knowledgeable, and therefore you will be more valuable to the company.
That's
right. You don't need to pay for ultras if you're a junior guy, right, or a mid-level guy, right? There's no point trying to buy a course like this. This is a course for leaders. So if you're a mid-level guy and a junior guy, you need to learn, or a girl, you need to learn by talking to people and different people, but constantly. Don't sit on your ass in front of the screen doing whatever it is. And I don't want to discriminate Figma UI design. Whether you're doing user interview, user research, whatever you're doing as a designer or as a leader, right? If you're not talking to people, if you're not talking to new people, whatever leader you are in whatever organization, that's going to be bad for your career. That's going to be bad for your development, because you're not learning, right? So you just have to be more curious, and you have to extract, but you can't just expect your boss to be the only source of information for you for everything you need to know, right? And then depend only on your boss, because he doesn't have time, or she doesn't have time to do that. You have to talk to many other people, right? So I love when I talk to, we're always interviewing people, interviewing leaders in different areas. And, I love when I talk to people that have a really kind of horizontal view of things, right? They understand the different areas of the company, the different roles, the different responsibilities, the different problems they need to solve. I'm going to give
two more pragmatic things, because what you say is absolutely right. And I think when I work with leaders, they say, okay, and Bruno or Bernardo, that sounds overwhelming. like to know all that. That's just like, there's so much. I can't do all that. So I just shared in the chat two little helpful things. The first is called the Imago dialogue script.
Okay.
Being curious or active listening, in theory, yes, I think we know this, but in reality, it's hard to practice this and learn this. So the Imago dialogue script is a cheat sheet. And what the cheat sheet is all about, it comes from relationship theory. It tells us that one of the hardest things to do is to be empathetic in the moment with somebody we disagree with.
Ooh, yeah,
you just want to fight. You just want to go. But the reality is, and what psychology and relationship theory tells us, is that everybody, every single person wants to be seen and wants to be validated. And when they are seen and validated, they are more than likely to then hear or see somebody else. So the script here basically says that in order to be empathetic, you actually have to take two steps first. You just mirror what somebody has said. You just repeat back and you say, is this what you said? Right? Do I have that right? Is that what you said? And they
show
say,
that
yes.
You're listening. Yeah.
Right. Show you're listening. The second step is then to validate them. And you just say, that makes sense to me. I can see that you talk about this all the time. Of course, this is important to you. I understand. And then you say, now you're ready to be empathetic. Gosh, that must be frustrating that this keeps happening.
Yeah.
What you've done is used a little cheat sheet to practice active listening. And then I think if you try this out a few times, you'll see somebody go, interesting. What are your thoughts? They'll then be more receptive to hear you. And that is that hard work. It's hard work. The other
it's difficult to change habits.
Is what we call the SCR framework. So this is storytelling. We as designers have been taught to give these inspiring stories. Let's talk about creating a keynote with 75 pages with all this imagery, and we're going to inspire you about the future and what could happen. And that story works really well when your audience wants to be inspired.
Sure.
But most of the meetings that we're in, our colleagues don't want to be inspired. They don't want us to take them down this journey. They want to understand our rationale and our argument. Why are you giving me this recommendation? I don't understand. Why is this the recommendation? So this framework is just a different way to storytell. It's called situation, complications, resolution. And it's basically like a math problem. S plus SC plus C plus C plus R. So what is the situation we agree with? So a good situation to start with is just saying something that everybody in the room will say, yep. So you could say something like, nobody is adopting our product. Yes. You don't put anybody to blame. You just say, this is what's happening.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And then the complications are complications that you see that are going to prevent you or prevent the situation from being solved. Yeah. Nobody is buying our product. Oh, and our entire backlog is all based that they've already adopted our product. Oh my gosh. Our entire budget depends on them adopting that product. So you then present complications that nobody else sees. And then your resolution is where you're just sharing the pros and cons, but it's something you can live with. So often I see designers suggesting something that, yes, could work, but that would like destroy their soul. Why are you ever giving a resolution that would destroy you? Instead, say, right, or present a series of resolutions. Hey, we can do nothing. And here are the pros and cons of doing nothing. We could do everything. And here are the pros and cons of doing everything. It'll be expensive. It'll take a lot of time. Or we could do this thing. And a lot of time, what you're trying to do in presenting those resolutions is creating tension, but healthy tension. You just want your colleague to say, where do you want risk? Do you want to spend a lot of time? Do you want to spend a lot of money? Do you just want to do nothing? Where do you want to spend that time? Yeah.
I love that.
Then you know you've done a good job. And if they still make decisions, well, they're choices that you can live with, right?
Exactly. Yes,
So
absolutely. I love that. I love when in the team you have people that you can count on to give you options, right? You know, at least in my case as a leader in my company, I expect, you know, not to just get a straight no as an answer. And particularly if there's no great justification, a lot of time it's based on opinion, right?
Yeah.
So the worst thing you can do is to just give a straight answer and it's based on an opinion and it's a negative, you know? So try to avoid that.
The best no is a not yet. So instead of saying no, just say not yet.
Not yet. We'll get to that. Great. Absolutely great. Thank you, Ryan. Look, we're out of time. I don't know about the audience, but I absolutely loved it. It went really fast. I'm sure everyone is really going to have a great time checking out these links. I've got the links here as well. We're going to ask Natalia to share later, which is our lovely event organizer. And used to be your babysitter as well.
She was our au pair, really like amazing.
She was your au pair, right?
So Natalia is
our event manager.
Yeah, Natalia, your event coordinator, is like family. She's our family. And so how brilliant that she, because we would talk about design stuff, you know, many years ago, and now she's working with you all. And so I'm so grateful for her connecting us again. And Natalia is wonderful.
Well, fantastic. You gave her a first opportunity of work and we gave her another opportunity now, and I'm sure she will have many others. She's great. So thank you, Natalia. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everyone. And welcome back to the Design Leadership Community. This is an initiative by The Bridge, a global network of talents, and we're specialized in connecting the best digital talents with top companies at a global level. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'll see you very soon. And thank you, Ryan, once again. Goodbye now.
You're welcome. Thank you. Cheers.